Ever wondered how someone turns childhood trauma, chaos, and adversity into a foundation for lasting success and leadership? I'm Dr. Frank Douglas, the host of the Antifragility Reframe podcast. Today, we will explore how embracing obstacles and stoicism can help one overcome a turbulent youth and become a thriving and successful entrepreneur. Our guest today is Mr. Dennis Meador. He has been an entrepreneur since age 14, now 30 years as an entrepreneur. He's the founder and host of the Legal Podcast Network. He is also a legal marketing specialist. And we are just so delighted to have him today, particularly because he is a student of Stoicism. And one of his favorite authors is Holiday, who wrote the book, The Obstacle is the Way, which basically is about anti-fragility, if I may say that, Mr. Meadow. Mr. Meadow,
I think that's a fair statement.
I'm glad, as you being a student of Holiday's work, I appreciate that comment. And Mr. Pardon me, Mr. Meda prefers to be called Dennis or DM. So I'll step away from my usual formality and refer to him either as a Dennis or DM. Welcome, DM.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a joy to be on the show.
I mentioned a holiday and the obstacle is the way, and in our preview interview, if you like, I was really quite impressed with your origin story. Would you mind sharing with us your early days and what caused you to begin to exhibit at an early age one of the things that your favorite author talks about, namely will, perception, and will?
I mean, sure. In my early days, my dad was in the Air Force. We moved around a lot. I think I was in 9 states by the time I was 7 years old. And then at 8 years old, my parents got divorced. My dad kind of, went off and did his own thing. And then my mom, she's kind of started dating like heroin dealers, crack dealers, gangsta disciple like leaders out of Chicago. We lived a few hours outside of Chicago in a place called the Quad Cities. And because of that time in my life from 8 to 13, 5 years, it was very formative in, when you go through whatever you want to call it, trauma, you go through hard times, you go through a tough situation, however you want to massage the words. When you go through a tough situation, like you talked about, you can either use it to kind of beat you down and still keep going, but you're still kind of beat down and defeated. Or, I mean, I just didn't know any other way but to just keep moving forward, moving forward. And so that kind of triggered in me the ability to look around and see opportunities to provide for myself, my sisters, sometimes my mother. Whether it be provide in a time of emergency when some sort of thing was happening with whoever she was with at the time and I needed to get them away from that person, or whether it's just, feeding myself and my sister on a daily basis. Go through that. And, obviously I could tell tons more stories, 3 drive-by shootings that I was sitting in the house when it happened, all kinds of that sort of stuff. But go through that. Now I move in with my father at age 13 and my now stepmother, stepbrother, stepsister. I probably wasn't an easy kid. Probably is an understatement. Coming from the situation I was in, I remember moving into the house and I had a box with my stuff and I put up, my NWA poster with Eazy-E. He was my hero at the time. I put up my girls in thongs, bikini thongs. I put out like, and I started listening to my music, and I didn't think anything about it. But for my stepmom and my younger stepbrother and stepsister, it was a culture shock. They had kind of lived in like, sort of like, just church life and that sort of stuff. So it was a little bit of a culture shock. And honestly, it was a culture shock for me, but I adjusted. Then at 14, I started, I put myself in a position where it was like, I knew I needed money. And so because of that, I started working with my brother and his friends, and I would go out and get the jobs in the neighborhood, whether it's shoveling snow, mowing lawns. And I was kind of the middle person. I would collect the money, get the jobs, and then I would pay them. I would keep half, they would get half for doing the job. And that's how I made the money I needed to get haircuts, get decent clothes, get decent shoes. We went to a private school that my stepmom, she watched kids in the morning for us to be able to go to. So kind of coming through that into my teen years, I became again, did the entrepreneur thing for 2 3 years as a young person. Then in my early 20s, went back to it. Had gotten into marketing and advertising, and by getting into entrepreneurship, it allowed me to travel. I lived in Romania off and on for 3 4 years during my 20s, and that's kind of been my life. I was a hard charger. 14 my own business, a couple of jobs at 16. I got married, or I pastored my first church at 18, married at 19, kids at 22, 23. And this is late 90s, early 2000s. We're not talking about the 1940s here, people. But kind of go through that, build some businesses, have some great successes, have some lessons that I've learned through life. Hard charging until about 36 years old. And at 36, kind of a culmination of several things that happened health wise, because I always ran a business, pastored a church, sometimes ran a second business, had my family with my 3 children. And I ended up in bed for a year and a half, realizing, well, I thought I had MS, but learned that I actually had a breakdown. And I remember going to the neurologist. It took us about a year and a half to get in. And he cushioned the blow so well, because he said, he was like, listen, you don't have MS. I'm looking at your nerve endings. I'm like, well, what is it? Like, life is good. And he's like, well, you have what's called successful man syndrome. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a bad problem, right? But I learned very soon thereafter, he was cushioning the blow to say, dude, you had a nervous breakdown. You need to chill a little bit.
So, what enabled you at age 14, then at 16, 18, to really get into the church and to take that path? And as you studied Stoicism, what are some of the principles that you became part of you?
Well, and I think there's two different sets of learning and understanding there. When I went into the church, it was the summer I turned 16, and I actually were the kind of churches I was in. Like, if you say I'm going to be a pastor, they say, okay, get up and preach. And so the first time I preached was in front of 500 600 teenagers, and it went well, and I was happy, and that kind of confirmed what I felt like was my thing. But getting into church, I I studied in church more to be of help to others. I never saw myself as needing help. I never saw, you know what I mean? Like, I had made the professions of faith that I needed to make, and I had had a relationship with, I had had a personal relationship at that time. And so, like, to me, like learning and things, it was always about feeding and helping others. And then I think the things that I gathered out of it were a byproduct of that. But it was always others first. But with Stoicism, I had left the church. My middle daughter, around 8 or 9 years old, started saying things like, "Daddy, I don't like boys the way I'm supposed to like boys. I like girls like that." And so my group of churches were not very fond of that sort of mind frame and lifestyle. And so I knew that I needed to kind of transition away. So at 36, when I had that breakdown, I kind of used that as a way to transition away from church. And we moved down to Austin, Texas. And I did fairly well just with no sort of like core belief system for a year or two till my brother in law died. This was a guy that my sister had been married to since she just newly turned 18. I'm very close to my full blood sister. And so when he died at like 40 years old, my sister has two kids, she's pregnant. I'm literally like, I don't have anything to kind of base it off of. And that's how I got into Stoicism, was the book, The Obstacle is the Way, at that moment, because I had no framework of religion that I could no longer say this is wholehearted. Like I couldn't look people in the eyes and say, and I hope this is not offensive to anybody. I'm just letting you know my frame of mind at the time. But I could not look at my sister in the eye and say God has a plan right now.
Okay, so give us three or four of the principles. Uh,
Of Stoicism,
yes.
I would say one of the things that the principle of the obstacle is the way. Essentially, me understanding that you have to go through something in order to really understand why that was put in your life. And I think they use an illustration from like a long time ago. A king had a bag of gold. He put a boulder on it. And so everyone was going around this boulder, but it caused a lot of work and struggle. But finally, some guy started breaking up the boulder to move it out of the way. And when he moved it out of the way, he saw that the very prize that he had been seeking all over the land was right underneath the biggest obstacle in his life. So the fact that we can find growth in obstacles was something I hadn't really thought about until then. Really, I thought of obstacles as something to get through or go around, not something to go through and learn from. So that was definitely one principle. Another principle that really spoke to me is the concept of our emotions, and the illustration is given in the book and was essentially, if someone came up to me and was just like yelling in my face, "Be mad, be mad, be mad," I would look at them and be like, "Who are you to tell me what to do?" But yet when an emotion comes, we allow it to have control of us. So we have more self-control against others than we do against ourselves. So then now when I get into those like times of like anger, I like recognize it and I think about it and I'm like, okay, is that anger reacting or is that logic reacting? And so that was another principle. And then, the Stoic principle of like logic above all. It's resonated with me. That's why I've worked with attorneys. That's why, if it's logical to me, then I can buy in. And so, understanding in the moments of distress, in the moments of tragedy, in the moments of trauma, by staying focused to stay in a place of logic instead of emotion, it allows you to, number one, handle the situation in a much better way. I don't know if most people have realized this, but when we're in the midst of arguing with our significant other or whatever, adding more emotion to the moment doesn't really bring your desired result if your desired result is to work it out and get to a better place.
To be anti-fragile, we keep the emotions in check. We
Mm-hmm.
focus on how we help people. We focus on growth. And part of your stoicism, we act. Thank you very much, Mr. Mehta. The
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Doctor.
was my pleasure.